I brought dinner and plane tickets to surprise my wife at work. What I saw through her office door that night destroyed 19 years of marriage in 60 seconds. She had no idea I was there. No idea I took photos. No idea what I was about to do next. By the time she realized, it was already too late. Maybe I should have asked more questions when she started coming home late, when her phone became something she guarded like a secret, when the warmth between us turned into polite silence. But I didn't. I trusted her. I believed in us. And that trust cost me everything. My name's Gilbert Chambers. I'm 42 years old, and I run a home restoration company here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Nothing flashy, but it's mine. I build it from the ground up, turning old houses into homes people could be proud of. Solid work, honest work. I met Caroline when I was 23. She was 21, working as a marketing coordinator downtown. All ambition and bright smiles. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony at her parents' place. Everyone said we were perfect together. For a long time we were. Mason came along 6 years ago. Our son, smart as a whip, with Caroline's dark hair and my stubborn streak. When I hold him, I still feel like the luckiest man alive. Even now, after everything, he's the one thing I can't regret. But somewhere along the way, Caroline and I stopped being us. She started working later, taking calls in the other room, going out for drinks with colleagues I'd never met. She'd made senior marketing manager last year. Bigger office, bigger salary, bigger expectations. I told myself it was just work stress. 3 weeks ago, I decided to fix it. Made reservations at Bella Terra, this Italian place Caroline used to love. I even bought plane tickets to Asheville for a long weekend. A cabin in the mountains, just us. I tucked those tickets into my wallet like they were made of hope. The day came. I got cleaned up after work, put on the shirt she always said made me look handsome. Mason was staying with my sister. Everything was set. Then her text came at 6:15. Babe, so sorry. Stuck at the office. Big presentation tomorrow. Can we reschedule? I stared at that message for a long time. I could have gotten angry, but instead I made a decision. If she couldn't come to dinner, I'd bring dinner to her. I called Bella Terra, got our order packed to go, grabbed wine from the store, daisies from the gas station. Even scribbled a note. Thought I'd bring the date to you. The drive took 25 minutes. I kept thinking about her face when she'd see me walk in, how she might smile that real smile I hadn't seen in months. I pulled into her building's parking garage a little after 7, grabbed everything, and headed up. The elevator ride to the 8th floor felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, the hallway was dim, most lights off. Her office was at the end, third door from the corner. The light was on. I walked toward it slowly, then stopped. I heard laughter. Her laughter. The kind she used to give me. And then I heard his voice. The door was cracked open, maybe 3 inches. My stomach tightened. Something in my gut told me to turn around, but I didn't. I stepped closer and looked inside. Caroline was sitting on the edge of her desk, wine glass in hand, wearing that navy dress I'd bought her. Standing in front of her was Preston Miles, her boss. Tall, 40, the kind of guy who looked like he was born wearing a suit. His hand rested near her thigh. She reached up, touched his tie, and then they kissed. Not a peck. A real kiss. Long, slow, deliberate. I stood there frozen, holding cold Italian food, wine, and wilting daisies. My hand started shaking. I stepped back, pulled out my phone, and took photos. 3 of them. Clear angles. Their faces visible. That was all I needed. I turned and walked away, reached the elevator, stepped inside. When the doors closed, I leaned against the wall and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Outside, I crossed to a trash can and stopped. For a moment, I just stood there. Then I pulled out the plane tickets, stared at them, and crumpled them up. Dropped them in. Then the flowers. The food. The wine. One by one. When I got to my truck, I sat behind the wheel and gripped it until my knuckles turned white. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just sat there and felt something inside me go cold. Not broken. Just cold. Clear. I started the engine and drove home. And as I pulled out of that garage, one thought kept running through my mind. This isn't over. It's just beginning. I don't remember the drive home. I must have stopped at lights, signaled where I needed to, kept the truck between the lines. But none of it registered. My hand were on the wheel, my eyes on the road, but my mind was somewhere else entirely, stuck in that hallway, watching my wife kiss another man like I'd never existed. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. The porch light was on, the one Caroline always set on a timer. That small detail hit me harder than it should have. She'd set it this morning, probably without thinking, part of the routine we'd built over 19 years. Now that routine felt like a lie. I sat in the truck for a while, engine off, just staring at the front door. Our home. The place where we'd brought Mason home from the hospital, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where we'd built what I thought was a life. Now I couldn't even look at it without feeling sick. When I finally walked inside, I didn't bother taking off my boots. Caroline always got on me about tracking dirt across her clean floors. Funny how that didn't matter anymore. I walked straight through to the bedroom and pulled my duffel bag from the closet. Started throwing things in: shirts, jeans, socks, my shaving kit. Moved on autopilot, like my body knew what to do even if my brain hadn't caught up yet. In the bathroom, I grabbed my toothbrush, deodorant, the basics. Caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. He looked tired, hollow, but not broken. Not yet. I went back to the bedroom and opened the safe in our closet. Pulled out my passport, birth certificate, the title to my truck. Documents I'd need if I was starting over. Because that's what this was now, starting over. Then I walked to the kitchen, grabbed the notepad we kept by the fridge, the one with her handwriting on half the pages. Shopping lists, reminders, little notes to herself. I tore off a clean sheet and picked up a pen from the junk drawer. For a moment, I just stood there, pen hovering over paper. What do you say to someone who just destroyed everything? What words could possibly carry the weight of what I'd seen? In the end, I kept it simple. 5 words, all caps, each letter pressed hard enough to leave an indent. Hope it was worth it. No name, no signature, no explanation. Just those 5 words, sitting in the center of the page like a bomb waiting to go off. I placed down the kitchen table, right in the middle where she couldn't miss it. She'd come home eventually, walk through that door, and find it. And when she did, she'd know. She'd know that I knew. I walked back to the bedroom one last time. On the nightstand was a photo of us from our wedding day. Young, smiling, believing in forever. I picked it up, looked at it for a long moment, then placed it face down. Couldn't bear to see those smiles anymore. Couldn't bear to see who we used to be. My phone was in my pocket. I pulled it out, turned it off, pried off the back, and removed the SIM card. Held it between my fingers for a second, then walked to the kitchen and dropped it in the garbage disposal. Didn't turn it on, just left it sitting there, dead and useless. She wouldn't be able to reach me. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Maybe not ever. I grabbed my duffel, slung it over my shoulder, and walked out the front door without looking back. Didn't lock it. Didn't turn off the lights. Just left. Drove across town to a motel I'd passed 1,000 times, but never thought I'd need. The Pines Inn, tucked between a gas station and a pawn shop. Neon sign buzzing in the dark. Paint peeling off the front office. The kind of place where nobody asks questions. I paid cash for 3 nights. The guy at the desk barely looked up, just slid me a key and went back to his phone. Room 106. I walked down the exterior hallway, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The room smelled like old cigarettes and cheap air freshener. Thin carpet, faded bedspread, a heater that rattled when I turned it on. There was a TV bolted to the dresser, remote held together with electrical tape. It wasn't much, but it didn't need to be. I wasn't here to get comfortable. I was here to think. I dropped my bag in the corner and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress sagged under my weight. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, and stared at the wall. My phone was gone. My house was behind me. My wife was probably still in that office, maybe still with him, maybe wondering where I was by now. Or maybe she wasn't thinking about me at all. I sat there in the silence, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on my chest. But beneath it all, something else was rising. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder, sharper. A plan forming in the back of my mind, piece by piece. She'd taken everything from me. My trust, my marriage, my sense of safety. Now it was my turn. I wasn't going to yell or break things or make a scene. That wasn't who I was. But I was going to make sure she understood exactly what she'd lost. Quietly, methodically, completely. I pulled out my wallet and opened it. Tucked inside was a business card I'd kept for years, just in case. Singleton and Brooks, attorneys at law. Gold lettering, address near the courthouse. Tomorrow morning, I make a call. Tomorrow, This would all become real. But tonight, I just sat there in that cheap motel room, letting the silence settle around me, and plan my next move. I woke up in that motel room before sunrise. Didn't sleep much, maybe 2 hours tops. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Saw them. The image was burned into my brain, and no amount of exhaustion could scrub it out. I got up, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at myself in the mirror. The man looking back wasn't the same one who'd walked into that office building last night. That man had been hopeful, trusting, maybe even a little naive. This man was something else. Harder, colder, focused. I grabbed the business card from my wallet, Singleton and Brooks. I'd call them as soon as they opened. But first, I needed to set something else in motion. By 7:30, I was dressed and out the door. Drove to a diner across town, ordered black coffee and scrambled eggs I didn't touch. Sat in a corner booth with my phone, the burner I'd picked up at a convenience store on the way. Cheap, anonymous, untraceable. Perfect. At 8 o'clock, I made the call. The receptionist answered on the second ring. Pleasant voice, professional tone. I told her I needed to speak with someone about filing for divorce. She didn't hesitate, didn't ask questions. Just said, "Can you come in at 10?" I could. Next call was to the bank. I knew our accounts were joint, checking, savings, even the credit cards. Everything tied together, like we were a team. Funny how that works when one person's playing for the other side. I scheduled an appointment for 11:30. Told them I needed to make some changes to my accounts. They said no problem. I sat back in the booth and took a sip of coffee. It was bitter, burnt, but I didn't care. My mind was already 3 steps ahead, mapping out what needed to happen and when. This wasn't about rage. It was about control, about making sure that when the dust settled, I was the one left standing. Around 9, I drove past the house. Didn't stop, just slowed down enough to see. Caroline's car was in the driveway. She was home. Probably found the note by now. Probably called my phone 100 times and got nothing. Good. Let her wonder. Let her sit with that uncertainty the same way I'd sat with hers. I thought about that note. Hope it was worth IT, sitting on the kitchen table. She'd come home to that. Maybe late, maybe after spending more time with him. She'd walk through the door expecting me to be there, waiting, ready to forgive or fight or do whatever she thought I'd do. Instead, she found 5 words and an empty house. What I did next was going to destroy her world. Not all at once. Piece by piece. Quietly. Methodically. She'd feel it coming, but she wouldn't be able to stop it. At 10, I walked into Singleton and Brooks. The office was small but clean, wood paneling on the walls, leather chairs in the waiting area. A woman in her 50s greeted me, offered coffee, asked me to have a seat. 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from a man named Richard Singleton, silver hair, navy suit, hands folded on the desk like he'd heard 1,000 stories just like mine. I didn't sugarcoat it. Told him everything. The canceled dinner. The surprise visit. Why I saw through that office door. Showed him the photos on my phone. Clear, undeniable, time-stamped. He looked at them without flinching, then nodded slowly. "We got something to work with," he said. That was all I needed to hear. He walked me through the process. "Prenup?" he asked. I nodded. We'd signed one before we got married. She'd been hesitant, thought it was unromantic, but I'd insisted. Infidelity clause. If either of us cheated, the other got everything. No spousal support, no claims to property. It was ironclad. He made a note. That's going to make this straightforward. Straightforward. That's what my life had become. A series of legal steps, calculated moves, decisions made in conference rooms instead of bedrooms. But that was fine. I didn't need emotions right now. I needed results. At 11:30, I was at the bank. Sat down with a representative, a younger guy in a tie that didn't quite fit. I explained what I needed, close the joint accounts, move everything into a new account under my name only, freeze the credit cards. He asked if my wife knew. I said she would soon enough. It took about 40 minutes. By the time I walked out, every dollar we'd saved together, every line of credit we'd shared, was locked down tight. She wouldn't be able to buy gas without cash in her purse, and she'd have no idea why. Not yet. I sat in my truck in the parking lot and let that sink in. It was done. The first domino had fallen, and there were a lot more lined up behind it. By the time I left the bank, it was early afternoon. I drove back to the motel, parked, and sat in my truck for a minute. My phone, the burner, buzzed. Text from my lawyer's office confirming they'd start drafting the divorce papers. Another domino. I walked into the motel room, dropped my keys on the nightstand, and sat on the edge of the bed. Pulled out a notebook I grabbed from the front desk and started writing. Not emotions, not feelings, just facts. What we owned, what we owed, what needed to be untangled. The house was mine. I'd inherited it from my grandmother when I was 19. She'd left it to me in her will, said I was the one who'd take care of it. Got it fixed up and moved in 6 years before Caroline and I got married. Title in my name. That would make things simpler. She'd always called it ours, but legally, it was mine. The business was mine too. Started it from nothing, built it with my own hands. She had no claim to it, but I knew her lawyer would try. They always did. I made a list of assets. The truck, paid off mine. The savings account, now locked. The retirement fund, I'd been contributing to for 15 years, mine. She had her own 401k from work, her own car. On paper, we'd been living separate financial lives more than I'd realized. That would work in my favor. Then I wrote down the one thing that mattered more than all of it combined. Mason, 6 years old. My son, the only good thing to come out of this marriage. I wasn't going to let her use him as leverage. I wasn't going to let her paint me as the bad guy and try to take him away. I'd fight for him with everything I had. My lawyer had mentioned hiring a private investigator. At first, I thought it was overkill, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I needed to know how deep this went, how long it had been going on, if there were others, if she'd been living a double life while I played the fool at home. I made a call, got a referral from Singleton. Guy named Davis, worked out an office near downtown, specialized in infidelity cases, surveillance, documentation. I scheduled a meeting for the next morning. That evening, I sat in the motel room and stared at my phone. Part of me wondered if Caroline had tried to reach me, if she called my old number 100 times, sent desperate texts, left voicemails I'd never hear. Part of me wanted to know what she was thinking, what excuses she'd cooked up, what lies she was already telling herself. But I didn't check, didn't care. She'd made her choice. Now I was making mine. Around 8, my sister called. I'd given her the burner number earlier, told her I was dealing with some personal stuff and needed space. She didn't push, just asked if Mason was okay. I told her he was with her for now, that I'd explain everything soon. She said she'd keep him as long as I needed. I thanked her and hung up. Mason. I hadn't seen him since yesterday morning. Hadn't tucked him in, hadn't heard his voice. That hurt more than anything Caroline had done. But I couldn't bring him into this mess. Not yet. Not until I had a plan, a path forward, something stable to offer him. I pulled out the photos on my phone. Look at them again. Caroline and Preston, frozen in that moment. Her hand on his tie, his hand near her waist. The kiss. It still hit like a punch to the gut, but the anger was colder now. Sharper. More useful. I forwarded the photos to my lawyer. Then I forwarded them to my own email, backed them up to a cloud account, saved them in 3 different places. Evidence. Proof. The kind that couldn't be denied or explained away. Tomorrow, I'd meet with the investigator. Tomorrow, I'd start building a case that would leave no room for doubt. But tonight, I just sat there in that cheap motel room and let the pieces of the plan fall into place. Caroline had no idea what was coming. She thought I'd vanished out of hurt, out of weakness. She thought I'd come crawling back eventually, ready to forgive and forget. She didn't know me as well as she thought. I wasn't coming back. I was moving forward. And when I was done, she'd be left standing in the ruins of everything she'd thrown away. The next morning, I met Davis at a coffee shop near his office. He was in his 50s, average build, the kind of guy who could blend into a crowd without trying. That's what made him good at his job. He ordered black coffee, pulled out a notepad, and got straight to business. "Tell me about the boss," he said. I told him what I knew. Preston Miles, 40 years old, senior vice president at Caroline's firm. Married. Lived in one of the newer subdivisions outside town. Drove a BMW. Wore expensive suits. Had the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Davis wrote it all down. "How long do you think this has been going on?" I've been asking myself the same question. At least 6 months. Maybe longer. She started working late around last summer. Started being secretive with her phone. I thought it was just work stress. He nodded. "They always say it's work." He closed his notebook and looked at me. "I'll start today. Surveillance on both of them. I'll track their movements, see where they meet, how often. If there's more to this, like a second location they're using, I'll find it. Second location, apartment, hotel room, somewhere they feel safe. People having affairs don't just kiss in offices. They get careless. He finished his coffee. Give me a week. I'll have a full report. I paid him half up front, cash. He said he'd be in touch and left. I sat there for a few more minutes, staring at my empty cup. A week. In a week, I'd know everything. How deep the betrayal went. How long she'd been lying to my face. By the afternoon, I'd made another decision. The house. It was mine legally, but it felt tainted now. Every room held memories I didn't want anymore. I called a real estate agent I'd worked with on a few restoration projects. Her name was Linda, sharp woman in her 60s who didn't waste time. I need to sell, I told her. When? As soon as possible. She said she'd come by tomorrow to take photos, get the listing started. I told her Caroline was still living there, but wouldn't be for long. Linda didn't ask questions. Just said she'd handle it. Next, I called my lawyer. Told him I wanted the house sold, and Caroline served with eviction papers. He said he'd draft everything and have it delivered to her office. Public. Professional. Cold. What about your son? Richard asked. I'm filing for primary custody. She's not stable. This affair proves it. We'll include that in the filing. Do you have the PI's information? He's working on it. I'll have a full report by next week. Richard made a note. Good. The more documentation we have, the better. That evening, I drove to my sister's house to see Mason. He was in the backyard, kicking a soccer ball around, laughing at something my sister's husband had said. When he saw me, his face lit up. Dad! He ran over and threw his arms around my waist. I picked him up, held him tight. He smelled like grass and sweat and innocence. Hey, buddy. You having fun? Yeah. Uncle Jim taught me how to do a trick shot. He wiggled out of my arms and demonstrated, kicking the ball into a makeshift goal. I clapped, told him it was perfect. My sister came out onto the porch, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She gave me a look, the kind that said we need to talk. I nodded. After Mason went back to playing, I walked over. How long is this going to go on? She asked quietly. I don't know. A few more weeks, maybe. Gil, he's asking about his mom. I don't know what to tell him. I looked at Mason, running around the yard, carefree. Tell him she's working. Tell him I'm dealing with some stuff. Just don't tell him the truth. Not yet. She nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Whatever you need. He can stay as long as you need. I thanked her and left. On the drive back to the motel, I thought about Mason's face. The way he'd hugged me. The way he trusted me to make everything okay. I couldn't let Caroline take that away from him. Couldn't let her poison his view of me or use him as a pawn. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about protecting my son, and I'd do whatever it took. 3 days later, the divorce papers were ready. Richard called me in the morning, said the process server would deliver them to Caroline at her office that afternoon. I asked if I needed to be there. He said no. Better if I stayed away. Let the papers speak for themselves. I spent the day working. Took on a small job replacing rotted deck boards for a client across town, just to keep my hands busy. Hammering nails, cutting lumber. It helped clear my head. Around 3 o'clock, my phone buzzed. Text from Richard. Papers delivered. She signed for them. I stopped what I was doing and sat down on the edge of the deck. It was done. She knew now. Knew I wasn't coming back. Wasn't going to forgive and forget. Knew I was taking everything. That evening, Davis called. I've got something. We met at a diner on the outskirts of town. He slid a manila folder across the table. I opened it. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Caroline and Preston leaving her office building together. Getting into his car. Pulling into a parking garage downtown. Walking into an apartment complex. They've been renting a place, Davis said. Furnished studio on the 4th floor. Lease started 8 months ago. Both their names on it. 8 months. I felt my jaw tighten. How often? 2, 3 times a week. Sometimes during lunch. Sometimes after work. They're not subtle. I flipped through the photos. One showed them on a balcony, wine glasses in hand. Another showed them going inside, his hand on her lower back. It wasn't just an affair. It was a whole separate life. There's more, Davis said. He pulled out a printed document. Bank records. Preston's been paying for the apartment. But there are also charges to hotels, restaurants, weekend trips. Guy's been financing the whole thing. I stare at the records. Thousands of dollars. Does his wife know? Not yet. But she will if you want her to. I thought about that. Preston's wife, whoever she was probably living the same lie I'd been living. Trusting someone who didn't deserve it. She had a right to know. Send her copies. I said. Everything. Davis nodded. Already planned on it. I closed the folder and leaned back. What else? Caroline tried calling you. A lot. Your old number. She left voicemails, sent texts. Then she started calling your sister, your friends. Nobody's talking to her. She's panicking. Good. Let her panic. Let her feel what it's like when your world falls apart and nobody's there to catch you. The next day, the eviction notice was served. Linda, the real estate agent, called to tell me the house photos were done and the listing would go live tomorrow. It'll move fast, she said. Good neighborhood, solid bones. You'll have offers within a week. Everything was falling into place. The divorce, the eviction, the house sale. Caroline's world was collapsing piece by piece, and she couldn't stop it. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I answered. Gilbert. Her voice. Shaky, desperate. Please. We need to talk. I didn't respond right away. Just let the silence stretch out. Gilbert, I know you're angry, but... Don't, I said. My voice was calm, cold. Don't try to explain. Don't try to apologize. You made your choice. It was a mistake. 8 months, Caroline. That's not a mistake. That's a decision. You chose him over me, over Mason, over everything we built. She started crying. I could hear in her breath, the way her voice broke. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, can we just... No. I cut her off. You threw away forever for someone who doesn't even care about you. And now you're going to live with that. I hung up, blocked the number, sat there for a minute, staring at the wall. She called hoping for mercy, hoping I'd soften, give her another chance. But mercy was something you gave to people who deserved it, people who respected you. She didn't. I opened the folder Davis had given me and looked at the photos again. The apartment, the trips, the lies, all of it documented, undeniable. She wanted to talk. She wanted to explain, but I was done listening. The trap had closed, and there was no way out. The papers were served on a Tuesday morning. Richard called me at 9:15 to confirm. She signed for them. Tried to talk to the process server, but he just walked away. I was at a job site, replacing kitchen cabinets in a Victorian downtown. I set down my drill and stepped outside. How'd she look? He said she went pale. Started shaking. Asked if there was a mistake. No mistake. She also received the eviction notice. And the listing for the house went live this morning. She's got 30 days to vacate. 30 days. A month to pack up the life we built and find somewhere else to go. It wasn't enough time, but I didn't care. She made her choices. Now she could live with the consequences. That afternoon, I sent the photos to HR. Not just the ones I'd taken that night. Davis had provided me with the full surveillance package. Caroline and Preston at the apartment. In his car. On that balcony. Timestamps, locations, everything documented. I attached them to an email with a simple subject line. Workplace relationship violation. No explanation needed. The photos told the story. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Blocked number. I didn't answer. Then a voicemail notification popped up. I listened. Mr. Chambers, this is Jana Holbrook from Human Resources at Clearwater Marketing. We've received some concerning materials and need to conduct an investigation. If you have any additional information, please contact us at your earliest convenience. I didn't call back. They had everything they needed. By Thursday morning, word had spread. My sister called. People are talking. Someone from Caroline's office reached out to a friend of mine. Said there was a huge scandal, 2 senior people fired. Caroline and Preston. She didn't say names, but yeah. Said it happened overnight. Security walked them out with boxes. I leaned back against a motel headboard. It was done. Caroline had lost her job. The career she'd spent years building. The position she'd been so proud of gone. All because she couldn't keep her hands off a married man. Preston's wife had received the photos too. Davis had confirmed it yesterday. She'd filed for divorce within hours, took the kids to her sister's house, changed the locks. Preston was living in a hotel now, scrambling to find a lawyer who could minimize the damage. Their affair hadn't just cost them their jobs. It had blown up 2 marriages, displaced 4 kids, destroyed 2 careers. And it had all started with a kiss I'd seen through a partially open door. That evening, I drove to my sister's house to see Mason. He was at the kitchen table doing homework, tongue poking out in concentration like always. When he saw me, his face brightened. Dad, look, I got a gold star on my spelling test. I sat down next to him, looked at the paper covered in his careful handwriting. That's great, buddy. I'm proud of you. Is Mom coming to get me soon? The question hit like a fist to the gut. I glanced at my sister, who was standing in the doorway. She gave me a small nod. Tell him something. Not yet, pal. She's dealing with some work stuff. But you'll see her soon. He nodded, seemed satisfied with that answer, and went back to his homework. I watched him for a moment, this little person who had no idea his world was falling apart around him. I protect him from this as long as I could. He didn't need to know the ugly details. Not yet. Maybe not ever. My sister walked me out to the porch. How much longer, Gil? I don't know. A few more weeks maybe. I'm filing for primary custody. Once that's settled, I'll figure out the rest. He asks about her every day. I know. Just keep telling him she's busy. I'll handle it when the time's right. She squeezed my arm. You're doing the right thing. I wasn't sure about that. I wasn't sure about anything anymore. But I knew I couldn't let Caroline near Mason until this was over. Couldn't risk her using him to manipulate me or feeding him lies about why Daddy left. On the drive back to the motel, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. You destroy my life. Caroline's voice, raw and broken. I lost my job. I'm losing the house. I have nothing. You had everything, I said quietly. You threw it away. I made a mistake. 8 months isn't a mistake. It's a choice. You chose him. You chose that apartment. You chose to lie to me every single day. She was crying now, voice hitching. Please, Gil. I'll do anything. I'll go to counseling. I'll quit. You already quit. They fired you. Don't do this. Please. What about Mason? What about him? You didn't think about him when you were with Preston. You don't get to use our son to guilt me now. He needs his mother. He needs a mother he can trust. You're not that anymore. I hung up, blocked the number, sat in the motel parking lot with my hands on the wheel, breathing slowly. She called hoping for sympathy, hoping I'd soften. But I was past that, way past that. She'd lost her job. She'd lose the house. And soon, she'd lose Mason too. Not because I want to hurt her. Because she'd proven she couldn't be trusted. And I'd be damned if I let her poison my son the way she'd poisoned everything else. A week later, I sat in Richard's office going over the custody filing. He'd laid out the case point by point. Caroline's affair, the instability it created, the fact that she'd been maintaining a secret apartment while living with our son. He'd included statements from my sister, photos from Davis's surveillance, even a timeline showing how often Caroline had been absent from home. This is strong, Richard said. A judge will see she prioritized the affair over her family. Combined with her recent job loss, you're in a good position for primary custody. What about visitation? She'll get weekends, most likely. Maybe supervised at first, depending on how the hearing goes. But the bulk of the parenting time will go to you. I nodded. That's all I wanted. Not to shut Caroline out completely. Mason still loved his mother, and I wouldn't take that from him. But I needed to be the stable parent, the one he could count on. There's something else, Richard said. He slid a document across the desk. Her lawyer sent this over this morning. She's contesting the prenup. I picked it up, scanned the legal language. She was claiming the prenup was signed under duress, that she didn't fully understand the terms, that it should be invalidated. Can she do that? She can try, but won't work. The prenup was notarized. You both had independent legal counsel, and she had 2 weeks to review it before signing. There's no case. So she's just desperate. Exactly. She knows she's losing everything, so she's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. I set the document down. What about the business? She's claiming she contributed to its success by managing the household, which freed you up to work. Wants a percentage. I almost laughed. She didn't manage anything. We had a housekeeper twice a week. She was barely home. I know. We'll document that. The business is yours, started before the marriage, grown through your own work. She has no legitimate claim. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, Richard filed for a temporary custody order, giving me primary placement of Mason. Caroline would get supervised visits, 2 hours twice a week, until the final hearing. When the order came through, I drove to my sister's house to pick up Mason. He was in the backyard, playing with a toy truck, making engine noises. I crouched down next to him. Hey, buddy, how about we go get some ice cream? His eyes lit up. Really? Can I get chocolate? You can get whatever you want. We drove to the ice cream shop on Main Street, the one with the hand-painted sign and the old-fashioned counter. Mason ordered a double scoop of chocolate chip. I got black coffee. We sat at a table by the window, and he swung his legs, licking his cone with intense focus. Dad. Yeah, pal. When am I going home? I took a sip of coffee, buying time. You're coming home with me today. We're going to stay at a new place for a little while. What about Mom? You'll see Mom on the weekends. But you're going to be with me most of the time. He thought about that, brow furrowed. Did you and Mom have a fight? Something like that, yeah. Are you getting a divorce? The words sounded strange coming from a 6-year-old. I set down my coffee and looked at him. Yeah, buddy. We are. He nodded slowly, like he'd suspected as much. Is it because of me? No. I reached across the table, put my hand on his. This has nothing to do with you. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes adults make mistakes, and things change. But I'm still your dad, and Mom's still your mom. That doesn't change. Okay. He went back to his ice cream, seemingly satisfied. Later that evening, I moved out of the motel and into a small rental house on the east side of town. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a yard with a fence. Nothing fancy, but it was clean, safe, and stable. I set up Mason's room with furniture from storage and some new things I'd picked up. A bed, a dresser, posters of dinosaurs and astronauts. Made it feel like his space. That night, after I tucked him in and turned off the light, he called out, Dad. Yeah. I'm glad I'm staying with you. My throat tightened. Me too, pal. Me too. I closed the door and stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to him settle in. He was safe. He was here. And no matter what happened in court, no matter what Caroline tried to pull, I'd make sure he stayed that way. The courthouse was cold that morning. I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom with Richard, watching people come and go, lawyers in sharp suits, families huddled together, court officers moving with practiced efficiency. Mason was with my sister. I told him I had an important meeting, nothing to worry about. Caroline arrived 15 minutes late, looking smaller than I remembered. She'd lost weight, her clothes hung loose, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Her lawyer was young, nervous, shuffling papers like he wasn't sure what he was doing. They sat on the opposite bench, and Caroline kept glancing my way. I didn't look back. When they called us in, the courtroom felt bigger than it should have. High ceilings, wood paneling, a judge's bench that seemed to loom over everything. Judge Patricia Hendricks presided, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Richard presented our case methodically. The affair, documented with timestamps and photos. The secret apartment, lease in both their names. Caroline's job loss. The instability. He painted a picture of someone who'd prioritized her own desires over her family, who deceived her husband and neglected her responsibilities as a mother. Caroline's lawyer tried to fight back, claimed she was a good mother, that she'd made a mistake but was getting counseling, said I was being vindictive, trying to punish her by taking away her son. He presented no evidence, just emotional appeals that fell flat. Then Richard played his final card. Your Honor, we have reason to question paternity. The room went silent. Caroline's face went white. Richard slid a document across to the judge. Mr. Chambers recently ordered a DNA test for Mason. The results came back 2 days ago. My heart was pounding. I'd ordered the test 3 weeks ago, after finding an old birthday card from Preston tucked in Caroline's office drawer at home, dated 6.5 years ago, just months before Mason was born. The timing had gnawed at me until I couldn't ignore it. Judge Hendricks reviewed the document, her expression unreadable. Then she looked up. And the results? Mason is biologically Mr. Chambers' son, Richard said. But the fact that Mr. Chambers felt compelled to verify this speaks to the level of deception and distrust created by Mrs. Chambers' actions. Caroline's lawyer shot to his feet. Objection. This is inflammatory. Overruled. Judge Hendricks said quietly. Sit down, counselor. The hearing lasted another hour. Caroline took the stand, crying, apologizing, begging for another chance. I watched her performance with detached curiosity. This was the woman I'd spent 19 years with, and I felt nothing. When it was over, Judge Hendricks didn't need long to decide. Primary physical custody is awarded to Mr. Gilbert Chambers. Mrs. Chambers will have supervised visitation every other weekend until further review. Mr. Chambers retains all assets as outlined in the prenuptial agreement. This court finds the prenup valid and enforceable. The gavel came down. Caroline's sob echoed through the courtroom. Outside, Richard shook my hand. Clean victory. She has no grounds to appeal. I nodded, feeling the weight of it settle over me. Mason was mine. The house would be sold. The money split per the prenup's infidelity clause, which meant I got 70%. The business stayed mine. Everything I'd built was protected. That evening, I picked up Mason from my sister's house. He ran to me like he always did, and I scooped him up. How was your meeting, Dad? It went well, buddy. Real well. Does that mean I get to stay with you? Yeah, you're staying with me. He hugged my neck tight, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. For months later, life had found a new rhythm. The rental house had become home. Not just a place we stayed, but somewhere that felt like ours. Mason's toys were scattered across the living room. His drawings covered the fridge, and every morning started with pancakes and him telling me about his dreams. School had been rough at first. Kids talked, whispered about divorces and parents and things 6-year-olds shouldn't have to hear. Mason came home one day with tears in his eyes, said a boy had called his mom a bad word he wouldn't repeat. I'd held him, told him people say cruel things when they don't understand, and that it didn't change who he was. The next week, I'd enrolled him in a different school across town. Fresh start, new friends, teachers who didn't know our history. Within a month, he was smiling again, bringing home artwork and talking about a kid named Tommy who liked dinosaurs too. Caroline had moved in with her parents after losing the house. The sale had gone through fast. Multiple offers closed in 30 days. I'd taken my 70%, put it toward a down payment on a real house. 3 bedrooms, fenced yard, quiet street. Mason picked out paint colors for his room, blue with white clouds on the ceiling. Caroline's supervised visits happened every other Saturday at a family center downtown. A social worker sat in the corner taking notes while she and Mason colored or played board games. He seemed okay with it, never asked why someone else had to be there. Maybe he understood more than I gave him credit for. I'd started seeing someone. Her name was Beth, owned a garden supply shop near my office. We'd met when I came in looking for native plants for the new house. She was patient, kind, didn't push. She knew my history. The whole town did, but she never brought it up unless I did. When she met Mason, she'd crouch down to his level and asked what his favorite dinosaur was. He'd said Triceratops, and she'd said that was her favorite too. He liked her after that. One Saturday afternoon, Mason and I were in the backyard planting a tree, an oak sapling I'd picked up from Beth's shop. He was digging the hole with a small shovel, taking his job very seriously. Dad, will this tree get really big? Yeah, buddy. Might take 20 or 30 years, but it'll be huge. Will I still live here? I smiled. Probably not. You'll be grown up by then, have your own place. But you can come visit and see how big got. He thought about that, kept digging. Will Mom come visit too? The question caught me off guard. Maybe, if she wants to. I think she's sad a lot. Yeah, she probably is. Do you still love her? I set down my shovel and looked at him. 6 years old, asking questions that didn't have easy answers. I love who she used to be. But people change, and sometimes they change in ways that hurt other people. Your mom hurt us, and I can't forget that. But she'll always be your mom, and it's okay if you love her. He nodded slowly. I do, but I like living with you better. I like it too, pal. We finished planting the tree, watered it, stood back to admire our work. It was small now, fragile, but it had strong roots. It would grow. That night, after Mason was asleep, I sat on the back porch with a beer, looking at the stars. My phone buzzed. Text from Beth. How was your day? Good, I typed back. Planted a tree with Mason. He's asking big questions. That's growth, she replied. Both of you. I smiled, set the phone down. She was right. We were growing, moving forward, building something new from the wreckage of what had been destroyed. Caroline had called once last month, left a voicemail I'd listened to but didn't return. She was working at a call center, living in a 1-bedroom apartment, trying to rebuild. She'd asked if we could talk, said she wanted closure. But I didn't need closure. I'd already moved on. The house sold. The business was thriving. Mason was happy. I met someone who made me feel like I could trust again, slowly, carefully. Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And that was enough. I thought about that note I'd left on the kitchen table all those months ago. Hope it was worth it. Caroline had gambled everything for a few stolen moments with a man who'd disappeared the second things got hard. She'd lost her job, her family, her home, and her son. Meanwhile, I'd rebuilt, brick by brick, day by day, and I was standing on solid ground.